Good morning, Lamai. Hope all of you are doing well. Now we are moving to the fourth unit, that is plant form and function. Under this video lesson, we are discussing plant tissues. I have already sent the note to you. Hope you have gone through it. While you are studying this video lesson, keep the note with you because we have to highlight some points in the note. First, we will discuss what a tissue is. Go to the definition in the slide. Here it says, tissue is a group of one or more cell types which together perform a specialized function or functions. Again, look at the definition. It says it's a group of one or more cell types. That means some tissues are made up of one cell types. For an example, if you consider parenchyma tissue, parenchyma tissue, sclerenchyma tissue, as you learn in your O levels, those tissues consist of only one cell types. But if you consider some complex tissues like xylem tissue, phloem tissue, they consist of more than one cell types. And also go to the second part of the definition. It says these tissues together perform a specialized function or functions. For an example, here xylem. If you consider xylem tissue or phloem tissue, they involve in performing more than one functions. So if you consider xylem again, xylem tissue mainly involved in conducting of water and mineral ions. In addition to that, it provides strength to the plant. Phloem also like that. Therefore, we have to say a tissue perform one function or several functions. Okay. In a plant, basically, we can identify different types of tissues. Those tissues can be basically divided into two categories. Those are meristematic tissues and permanent tissues. Look at the flow chart in the slide. Then these meristematic tissues are continuously dividing tissues, or meristematic tissues consist of continuously dividing cells, but they are undifferentiated. Permanent tissues consist of differentiated cells. After being permanent, most of the permanent cells can't divide, but some permanent tissue cells can divide later in the lifespan. We can discuss those later. Okay, then here these permanent tissues can be categorized into three different tissue systems. Those are dermal tissue system, ground tissue system, and vascular tissue system. We can discuss one by one later. This ground tissue, remember this ground tissue is a filling tissue. It is normally found in between dermal tissue and vascular tissues. There are three types of ground tissues, or there are three types of cells in ground tissues. Those are parenchyma, collenchyma, and sclerenchyma. And there are two types of vascular tissues. Those are xylem and phloem. First, we will discuss about meristems, locations, and the role of meristems in plant growth. These meristems are undifferentiated tissues. That means cells of meristems called meristematic cells are not specialized for a specific function as permanent cells or permanent tissues. These cells can constantly divide by mitosis. Here it says the cells of meristems constantly divide under suitable conditions and produce new cells. These dividing cells of meristems are known as initials. In other words, these initials continuously divide by mitosis and add new cells. So actually plant growth occurs due to the activity of these initials. Some of the cells added by meristems then elongate and differentiate to produce new tissues of the plant. But others remain as meristems. So what is the meaning of that? Here, these meristems are found actually in growth points of the plant. So what are these growth points? If you consider shoot apex, that means tip of the shoot, root apex, that means tip of the root, axillary buds, which are found at the base of leaves, those contain meristems. Those are some locations. Here this diagram represents a shoot apex. Focus there at the tip. It has shoot apical meristem. This shoot apical meristem consists of initials. Those initials constantly divide under suitable conditions by mitosis and add new cells to the plant. Some of the cells added by these initials found in apical meristem are pushed downwards, and some cells remain inside the apical meristem. For an example, again, if you consider like this, think about single cell or single initial. Single initial divide by mitosis and produce two daughter cells. Among these two daughter cells, one is retained within the apical meristem and other one is pushed downwards in the shoot apex. Then that cell, the cell that pushed downwards, elongate, and then that elongated cell is differentiated and it gives rise to permanent cells. That means these newly added cells elongate, differentiate and produce different permanent tissues. So previously we discussed about different permanent tissues which consist of different types of cells as parenchyma cells, collenchyma cells, sclerenchyma cells, cells in xylem and phloem. All are produced due to differentiation of cells added by meristems. Okay. Simply in other words, we can say plant growth occurs by making new plant tissues by meristems. That means you know that shoot elongates, root elongates. That means the root grows, the shoot grows. The growth of this shoot, growth of the root happens due to the activity of meristems. And also here meristems may have dormant periods. What is the meaning of this dormant period? Dormant means in some periods they remain inactive. For an example, so previously we said at the beginning of this slide it says they constantly divided under suitable conditions. What are the suitable conditions? That means suitable conditions means conditions favorable for the plant growth. Suitable temperature, enough of sunlight, enough of water, those are suitable conditions for the plant growth. If the environment or the condition is suitable, then plant growth constantly occur. Then initials in meristems also divide. But think about cold conditions, or if you consider a temperate country, there's a winter season. During the winter, temperature is very low. Very low temperature is not suitable for the plant growth. And also if we consider dry conditions, those are not suitable for the plant growth. Then in such unfavorable conditions, initials also remain inactive. Then when the environment or the conditions become favorable again, initials can reactivate or meristems can reactivate and start to produce new plant cells. That's why it is said meristems may have dormant periods. It says may, not always, because in some regions throughout the year there is suitable condition for plant growth. Then in such plants, meristems constantly produce new cells. But if the condition is unfavorable, it may undergo dormant period. Previously we said that meristems are found in growth points of the plant like shoot apex and root apex. And also we said earlier, the meristems in these growth points like shoot apex and root apex divide constantly under suitable conditions and add new cells to the plant. Then those new cells are then elongated. Then they differentiate and produce permanent tissues. Based on this, three zones can be identified in the shoot apex and root apex. Actually, there is no clear demarcation between these points. So therefore, the zone of cell division, cell elongation, and zone of cell maturation are three overlapping regions found in shoot apex and root apex. So if you look at this, as name implies, in zone of cell division, initials are present. They divide by mitosis and add new cells. Then those new cells are pushed towards zone of cell elongation. As name implies, within the zone of cell elongation, cells are elongated. Then those elongated cells are pushed towards the zone of maturation, where differentiation of these cells happen and produce permanent tissue cells. Here you can observe there are two diagrams. The left hand side diagram represents shoot apex. Right hand side diagram represents root apex. So in shoot apex, here at the tip surrounding the shoot apical meristem, we can observe here it has zone of cell division. It is not marked. You can mark it. Below cell division, below zone of cell division, it has zone of cell elongation. Below that, it should have zone of maturation. We can discuss about the primary growth happens in shoot apex in detail in the next section under plant growth. Until then, Remember here at the tip it has zone of cell division, below that it has cell elongation, then below that it has zone of maturation. But in your right hand side diagram, in the root apex, these three zones are clearly marked. Look at that. At the tip of the root, you can observe there is zone of cell division, where you can observe the apical meristem. Then it is here in this diagram, it is labeled as root apex. Actually, it is apical meristem. In a note also, so you can cut this word root apex and write it as apical meristem, which consists of initials. Those initials divide and add new cells. Those new cells added are pushed upwards towards zone of elongation. Then cells are elongated. Then those elongated cells added towards the zone of differentiation or zone of maturation, where they are differentiated and produce permanent tissues. Okay, now we will move to characteristics of meristematic cells. All cells in the meristems have common characteristics. Among them, first we will discuss about structural features. When we are discussing these structural features, focus on the diagram or focus on this tissue diagram. Here it says, as a first feature, all are living cells. Then second one, they are isodiametric, roughly spherical in shape. What is the meaning of isodiametric? That means they have similar diameter. You can observe in this diagram, all these cells are almost have same diameter, same in size. Okay. Then third feature, they have central nucleus. You can observe in this diagram, each cell has a comparatively large central nucleus. And also they have dense cytoplasm. Okay, next structural feature, they have only thin primary cell walls, no secondary cell walls, only thin primary cell walls are present. Therefore, easily through these cell walls, materials can be exchanged. It is important for the living status of this cell. Then also here it says cells are closely packed without intercellular spaces. You can observe no intercellular spaces here. Then large central vacuoles are absent in cytoplasm. Here you can observe it clearly. Remember that and underline that that feature can be easily used to differentiate meristems from parenchyma sometimes. Meristems do not possess large vacuoles. They have dense cytoplasm without vacuoles. In the center, it has large nucleus. Those are the structural features. So if you go to functional features or physiological features of meristems, as we said earlier, we can say they are structurally and functionally undifferentiated. That means we said undifferentiated means they are not specialized for a specific function or functions. Second one, they have the ability to multiply under suitable conditions. That means they divide under suitable conditions. In meristems, there are three overlapping zones of cells consisting of cells at successive stages of cell division, cell elongation, and cell differentiation. We mentioned those earlier in the shoot apex and root apex as well. Okay. Then there are three types of meristems. Those are apical meristems. Second one, lateral meristems. And third one, intercalary meristems. We can discuss about each of these meristems after this slide. First, we will discuss about apical meristems. As name implies, they should be found at apices of plant or tips of the plant. Here you can observe the locations of apical meristems are root apex, that means tip of the root, then shoot apex. In addition to that, they are found in axillary buds. So these axillary buds are found at the base of petiole of leaf, where the leaf connects to the stem. Okay. Then it says apical meristems have primary origin. That means they are found from the beginning of the plant and they involve in primary growth of the plant. So what is this primary growth and actually what happens in primary growth? During the primary growth, shoot elongates, root elongates due to the activity of these apical meristems. That is the primary growth. So it says here they add, that means apical meristems add new cells that enable increase in length of shoot and root. This process is known as primary growth. Then we are moving to the second type of meristems, that is lateral meristems. There are two types of lateral meristems. Those are, first one is vascular cambium. Second is cork cambium. These have secondary origin and involve in secondary growth of the plant. So what is this secondary origin? as name implies, they are originated later in the lifespan, secondarily in the lifespan. So what is the secondary growth then? That means it should be the growth occur in plants secondarily or later in the lifespan. We can easily understand this. Think about a jack tree or a mango tree. I think all of you have observed a jack tree or mango tree at the beginning of its growth, of their growth. At the beginning of the growth of those trees, I think you have seen that the shoot elongates, root elongates as a very thin structure. That shoot and root elongate due to the primary growth. But later in their lifespan, after a particular period, rate of elongation of shoot decreases. Rate of elongation of shoot decreases. Then I think you have seen that the stem start to become fat. Circumference of the stem increases. Likewise, root also start to become fat. Or that means circumference increases. That is the secondary growth. That's the beginning of secondary growth. At that time period in woody plants, these lateral meristems are originated and involved in secondary growth. We can discuss about the secondary growth in detail under the section of growth. Until then, just memorize like this. Okay. Then these lateral meristems arrange as peripheral whorls in stem and root. We will discuss it under the growth. They are found in woody plants. What are woody plants? That means, in other words, plants that produce a wood. Among angiosperms, most dicots produce wood. They undergo secondary growth and produce wood. All gymnosperms undergo secondary growth and they produce wood. Those are woody plants. Then here they are found in woody plants and involved in secondary growth and increasing circumference of roots and stems. So this is the function of the lateral meristem. So underline it or mark it in your note as a function. Function of lateral meristems is involved in secondary growth, in increasing circumference or girth of roots and stems. So earlier, what's the function of apical meristems? Apical meristems involved in primary growth. That means they involve in elongation of the shoot and root during the primary growth. That's a function of apical meristem. So mark those or highlight those in your note. Okay. Then here the tissues produced by this vascular cambium and core cambium are mentioned here. Just go through this. We can discuss this in detail when we are discussing secondary growth of plants in the next section. Okay. Read this. The vascular cambium produces secondary xylem and secondary phloem. Secondary xylem means the xylem which is secondarily added. Secondary phloem means the phloem which is secondarily added to the plant later in the lifespan. The core cambium produces thick and tough periderm, replacing epidermis during the secondary growth. The third type of meristems is intercalary meristems. Here it says some monocots such as grasses show meristematic activity at the bases of stems and leaves called nodes. These are known as intercalary meristems. What are these nodes actually? Think about a grass or think about a bamboo tree or bamboo plant. Here at the right upper corner, you can observe a diagram of a grass. A node is labeled there. Look at that. Such nodes are found in bamboo trees as well, as we mentioned. අපි සිංහලෙන් බැම්බු වල නැත්නම් උණ වල ගැට කියලා කියන්නේ. ඒ ගැට තමයි මේ node එකක් කියලා කියන්නේ. Okay, then the distance in between two nodes is known as internode. Here not only in these monocots, dicot plants also possess nodes and internodes. Look at the other diagram. Here node is labeled. It is found at the base of the leaf of the stem. And also, as we said, the distance or the gap between two adjacent nodes is known as internode. Focus on them. Okay. Then here it says these intercalary meristems have primary origin. As we said, they are found from the beginning of the plant and involved in primary growth. Now you know that. Then the functions of intercalary meristems are stated here. First one is they allow rapid regrowth in damaged leaves. Here you can observe it specifically in grasses, mainly in grasses. If you cut grasses, you know that they resprout. That resprouting of grasses happen due to this due to the activity of intercalary meristems found in these nodes. The second function is meristems in nodes add new cells to the internode and involving elongation of internode. That's the second function. So due to that means think about this node in these plants, the intercalary meristems or the initials in nodes divide constantly and add new cells to the internode. Due to the addition of new cells, this internode is elongated. That is what mentioned here. So mark these as two functions in your note. Okay, now we are moving to plant tissue systems. It says here, the new cells added by meristems are differentiated to perform specialized functions and form plant tissue systems. We actually mentioned it earlier. The elongated cells differentiate and then form permanent tissues which are belong to different plant tissue systems. During this differentiation process, these new cells undergo changes in their cytoplasm, organelles, and cell wall. Therefore, several types of plant cells can be recognized according to their structure and function. That means, simply in other words, differentiation process is different. Some cells added by meristems differentiate and form cells of xylem. Some cells differentiate and form cells of phloem. Likewise, different other permanent tissue cells are produced from these meristems due to different type of differentiation process. Okay, then here we said this earlier. Vascular plants have three main tissue systems. Those are dermal tissue systems, ground tissue systems, and vascular tissue systems. So look at the diagram at your right hand side. Here in that diagram, dermal tissue system, which is the outermost protective layer of leaf, stem, and root, is indicated in light blue color. You can observe it in the leaf, light blue color margin or light blue color region found as the outermost layer of the leaf, stem, and root represent dermal tissue system. So epidermis is an example of dermal tissue. Then you can observe vascular tissue at the middle of the stem, root, and leaf. They are labeled purple color here. You can observe in the leaf also here that a transverse section of leaf is indicated, midrib, and the other lateral veins, the transverse sections of midrib and other lateral veins are indicated. Within those you can observe in purple color vascular tissue system. In the stem also, then the vascular tissue systems or vascular tissues are arranged as a ring. In the root also in the middle in purple color you can observe vascular tissues. It is labeled. Third type is ground tissue. This is indicated in yellow color here. Remember here, ground tissue is a filling tissue. It normally fills gaps between dermal tissue and vascular tissue. Among tissue systems, first we will discuss about dermal tissue system. As we said earlier, dermal tissue system is the outer protective covering of plants. Example is epidermis. Epidermis in stem, roots of the primary plant body, and also epidermis of leaf belong to this dermal tissue system. You can observe these two diagrams in this slide. The upper right hand corner, you can observe a transverse section of a leaf, part of a leaf. There you can observe the upper epidermis and lower epidermis. Both are belong to dermal tissue system. And also the diagram at the bottom, right bottom corner, represent a root, actually root tip. You can observe root hairs. Those root hairs are found in epidermal cells. That enlarged diagram, enlarged circle represent some epidermal cells with root hairs. Not only in leaf and root, this epidermis is found in stem as well during the primary growth. But remember, during the primary growth, we said earlier, during the secondary growth in woody plants, this epidermis is replaced by periderm. We can discuss it later. Okay, now we will move to structural features of this dermal tissue system or epidermis. Here you can clearly observe this epidermis consists of tightly packed cells, and also there is a single cell layer. Tightly packed means there are no intercellular spaces. Cells are tightly packed without intercellular spaces, and also normally covered by a cuticle which is a waxy epidermal coating in aerial parts. Aerial parts means in leaves and also in shoots, that means in stem. Epidermis is covered by the cuticle. You know that cuticle is important in reducing the water loss. The main component of cuticle is also cutin. So it's a waxy layer. Then also it is said specialized cells such as guard cells, trichomes, and root hairs are also found in epidermis. So what are these guard cells? You can observe the leaf structure. Stoma is surrounded by two guard cells, not only in leaves. These stomata are found in primary stem as well. Then again, those stomata, each stoma is surrounded by two guard cells. Those are found in between epidermal cells. So what are these trichomes then? Here it says those are shoot outroots. That means outroots of shoot, not root, outgrowths of shoot. Those may be epidermal hairs, or sometimes glands even. You can observe in the leaf, a trichome is labeled. You can observe it. And root hairs, look at the root hairs in the diagram given at right bottom corner. Look at it carefully. Root hair is a unicellular cytoplasmic process. It is a cytoplasmic process which is extended into the soil from that epidermal cells. The root hairs increase the surface area of absorption of water and minerals from soil solution. Okay, what are the functions of epidermis? Here you can use this diagram also. Some functions are summarized there. Okay, we will move to the first function, that is defense against physical damage and pathogens. Here, since there are no intercellular spaces, pathogens can't easily move through these epidermal cells. And also as an outer covering, as an outer single cell layer, epidermis provide protection to internal tissues of stem, leaves and roots. That's the first function. Second one was mentioned earlier. Cuticle helps to prevent water loss. Third one, root hairs involved in absorption of water and mineral lines. Previously we said that root hairs increase the surface area of absorption of water and mineral lines from soil solution. Then guard cells help in gaseous exchange. Actually, it involves in atmospheric gaseous exchange. Carbon dioxide that used for photosynthesis can move in, and also oxygen produced during photosynthesis can move out. And also during nighttime, even in nighttime, oxygen that needed for respiration can move in through these guard cells, that is gaseous exchange. Then trichomes. We said earlier trichomes are epidermal outgrowths such as epidermal hairs or glands. These hairs, that means epidermal hairs, reduce water loss. Shiny hairs reflect excess light. And also some trichomes, that means glands, secrete chemicals which involve in defense against insects, pathogens and herbivores. Okay, finally we said this earlier as well. Epidermis in all the regions of stem and roots is replaced by a protective layer called periderm after the secondary growth. We can discuss it when we are discussing the secondary growth. The second tissue system is ground tissue system. We said it's a filling tissue. So here it says it fills gaps between dermal tissue and vascular tissue. It mainly consists of cortex and pith. Here you can observe these two diagrams at your right upper corner. The first diagram at your left hand side represents a transverse section of dicot stem. There you can observe in the middle it has pith. Outer to vascular bundles it has cortex. Those represent ground tissue system. You can observe clearly those tissues fill the gaps between outer epidermis and or dermal tissue layer and the vascular tissue system. At the right hand side you can observe a transverse section of monocot stem. There you can observe in between vascular bundles it has ground tissue. Okay. Not only cortex and pith, this ground tissue is found in other parts of the plant as well. In the root also ground tissue is present. That means in roots there is a cortex and also pith. Not only that, in the leaf you can observe in between upper epidermis and lower epidermis it has leaf mesophyll cells. There are two types of leaf mesophyll cells as you observe in this diagram. Those are palisade mesophyll cells and spongy mesophyll cells. those are also ground tissue or filling tissue. Okay, then we'll move to functions of them. There are 4 basic functions of ground tissue system. Those are storage. Example, you can put this in your note as well. The ground tissue, that means cortex and pith, involved in storage basically. Photosynthesis is done by mesophyll cells, palisade mesophyll cells, spongy mesophyll cells of leaf possess chloroplast. They involve in photosynthesis. Support also given by cortex and pith up to a certain level. The short distance transport is the other function. It is done by cortex in root. Cortex in root involves in short distance transport. We can discuss that when we are discussing plant transport. Okay. Then 3 main types of cells are present in ground tissue. Those are parenchyma cells, collenchyma cells, and sclerenchyma cells. I think you have heard this in your O levels as well. Now we will move to the first type of ground tissue cells. Those are parenchyma cells. First, we can discuss the structural features. When we are discussing structural features, look at the diagram. I think you have already drawn the diagram in your note. It is important. And also look at this light micrograph as well. There's a practical. In that practical, you have to observe light micrographs of different plant tissues. Therefore, we have to cover that part as well. Therefore, be familiar with this light micrograph as well. Since there's a practical, those light micrographs can be given even in the exam, and they may ask to identify the particular cell type or particular tissue. Then based on that, they can give questions. Therefore, be familiar with light micrographs given in these slides. Okay, we'll move to structural features. First one, living even at functional maturity. It is actually not a structural feature. We can't consider living or dead state as a structural feature. Okay, anyhow, remember this, it's a living tissue at functional maturity. That means even after differentiation and mature, it remains living. Second feature, cells. This is a structural feature. Cells are irregular, columnar, or spherical shape. For an example, if you consider the spongy mesophyll cells, those are parenchyma. Spongy mesophyll cells in leaf are irregular shaped. Palisade mesophyll cells in leaf are columnar shaped. Then the parenchyma cells in cortex and pith are roughly spherical shaped. Okay, remember those examples. You can put those onto your note. Okay, then third one, mature cells have primary cell walls, which are relatively thin, flexible, and lack secondary cell wall. Remember that. Therefore, since parenchyma cells have only primary cell wall, materials can easily exchange through it. Therefore, it remains living even at maturity. Okay, then they have a large central vacuole. You can observe it clearly in the diagram. And also they contain intercellular spaces. Even palisade cells have less intercellular spaces. Those two features, that means the having large central vacuole and containing intercellular spaces, can be easily used to distinguish or to differentiate parenchyma from meristematic cells, because sometimes it may be confusing when you observe micrographs. Okay, use these two features. Okay, next one, found in both primary and secondary tissues. That means in other words, we can say during the primary growth as well as during the secondary growth, parenchyma cells are added. Therefore, they are found in both primary tissues and secondary tissues of the plant. Some parenchyma contain chloroplast, not all, some, and involve in photosynthesis. Example, leaf mesophyll cells. We will find the locations of parenchyma in plant. Remember, parenchyma is the most abundant cell type in plant. So they are found, and also it's a soft tissue. They are found in soft parts of the plant. They are found in leaf mesophills. We said palisade mesophills and spongy mesophyll cells are belong to this, and also cortex, pith, and storage tissues like fruits, tubers, xylem, phloem, flowers. Those are some locations. Okay, then we will move to functions. There are 3 basic functions. First one is perform most of the metabolic functions of the plant. Example, photosynthesis, and also synthesis of various organic compounds. Second one, for an example in the previous one, we can say mesophyll cells involve in photosynthesis. Okay, then second function, storage of food, water and air. Food storage parenchyma cells have abundant leucoplast, the type of plastid. Those plastids store different type of food, mainly starch, in roots and stem. Okay, water is stored inside large vacuoles. Therefore, water storage parenchyma have abundant large vacuoles. Then air is normally stored inside intercellular spaces. For an example, if you consider leaf mesophyll cells, there are abundant intercellular spaces in between spongy mesophyll cells, which can store some air. Okay, then we'll move to the third function. Most of the parenchyma cells retain the ability to divide and differentiate under suitable conditions. We previously said normally permanent tissue cells can't divide later in the lifespan, but here there is an exception. Even though parenchyma is a permanent tissue, it can later divide and differentiate into other cell types during the lifespan. But remember later. But remember also remember parenchyma cells, sclerenchyma cells and other permanent tissue cells can't further divide after maturation. That means the initials will divide, you know that, but when they are differentiated, after they are differentiated, they do not divide. But parenchyma can do that. Okay. This dividing ability is important in wound repairing of the plant. It's a function. These abilities also make it possible to multiply and differentiate cells even from a single parenchyma cell in tissue culture practices. I think you have heard about tissue culture. Under in vitro conditions, even using a single plant cell, entire whole plant can be produced in tissue culture by providing artificial culture media, by providing suitable conditions. The second cell type belong to dermal tissues is collenchyma. Again, first we will discuss about structural features. Here the first one, they are generally elongated with polygonal shape cross sections or transverse sections. Look at the diagram, focus on the diagram. Here the right hand side it represents a transverse section. You can observe cells are polygonal shape in transverse section. And also in the middle you can observe an outer weave of collenchyma cell. It's an elongated cell. And also focus on light micrograph as well. Okay, then go to the second feature. They have thicker primary walls than parenchyma cells. But remember only primary cell walls, no secondary cell wall. Okay, no secondary cell wall, only primary cell wall, but it is thicker than parenchyma cells. Remember it and underline it. Next one, their walls are, look at this feature carefully, This is the unique feature. This is a unique feature which can be used to distinguish collenchyma from other cell types. Look at this. Their walls are unevenly thickened or extra thickening of cell wall at the corners of the cell. This uneven thickening is due to extra deposition of cellulose at the corners of the cell. Remember, there is no lignin deposition, no secondary cell wall. Extra deposition of cellulose produce this uneven thickening or extra thickening of cell wall at the corners of the cell. Remember again, underline that or mark it in your note. That is a unique feature which can be easily used to distinguish parenchyma even in a light micrograph. Look at this light micrograph. Here you can observe those black color regions, black color triangular shaped regions on in between cells represent this uneven thickening of cell wall. That feature can be easily used to distinguish. Okay, the next one, this also have large vacuoles inside cytoplasm as in parenchyma. Some other features of collenchyma cells are mentioned here. Go to the first one. It says even at functional maturity they are living and flexible and elongating with stems and leaves that they support. Here these are living cells because they have only the primary cell wall. Then through the primary cell wall, materials can easily exchange. And also they are flexible, again due to primary cell wall. And also it says the cells can elongate with stems and leaves that they support. That means, in other words, we can say when the stem and leaves that they support grow, these collenchyma cells found in those locations can elongate. That's the idea behind that. Okay, then go to the next feature. There are no intercellular spaces. Cells are tightly packed. So in the previous slide, we observed a transverse section go to that, you can find there are no intercellular spaces. Okay, then have primary origin, not found in secondary tissues. Remember that and underline that statement in your note. Cholenchyma are not found in secondary tissues. In other words, that means during the secondary growth of the plant, cholenchyma cells are not added. They are not differentiated. That's the meaning. And these are grouped in strands. In the locations you can find along the length axis, they are arranged as strands. And also there's another important thing. It is not mentioned here. You can put that into the note, put a star in the note and write there. Cholenchyma are never found in roots. Roots do not have cholenchyma. They are found in stems and also in leaves, but not in roots. Remember that. Okay, then go to the locations. There are two main locations. First one is just inner to epidermis of young stages of primary growth structure of dicotyledonous plant stem. This is also known as hypodermis. We can also term that layer as the outermost cell layer of cortex. Here, look at the diagram given at right upper corner. You can observe the cortex, and outer to cortex in green color you can observe the epidermis. Here you can observe just inner to the cortex, or as the outermost just inner to the epidermis, just inner to the epidermis, and as the outermost layer of the cortex you can observe cholenchyma. But here when you are stating that location, some important words should be stated. What are those? Here they are given in red color. You have to say that these cholenchyma are found only during primary growth structure in dicotyledonous plant stem, because here such cholenchyma tissue layer is not found in monocot stem. At this location, monocot stem has sclerenchyma fibers, and also this cholenchyma tissue is found only during the primary growth structure, because during the secondary growth of these dicot plants, this cholenchyma cell layer is removed. In other words, you can memorize it like this. After the secondary growth in woody plants, in woody dicot plants, cholenchyma tissue can't be observed as the outermost layer of the cortex, or near to the epidermis there is no cholenchyma tissue layer. Also, we can say there is no cholenchyma in the stem after the secondary growth in dicotyledonous plants. Okay. Then go to the second location. In petioles and midrib of dicotyledonous plant leaves, just below the epidermis. Again, you can observe the transverse section of dicot leaf. This is actually a histological structure. You can observe in the middle it has vascular bundle. It consists of xylem and phloem. That means the midrib. Just upper to the midrib you can observe cholenchyma. It is labeled there. The leaf structure, here the midrib continues in the petiole. Therefore, at the other side of the petiole also, as a continuation of this cholenchyma in midrib, we can find cholenchyma. Okay, here also we have to definitely say they are found only in dicotyledonous plant leaves, because monocot leaves do not possess cholenchyma at this location. So therefore underline it in your note. They should be definitely stated when you are stating the location. Okay. Then finally we will move to the function of cholenchyma. Function is it gives mechanical support to leaves and stems without restraining growth. We said that they are found in dicot leaves and primary growth structure of dicot stem. For those structures, cholenchyma provide mechanical support without restraining growth. Here we said earlier, with the growth of the stem and leaves, cholenchyma cells can elongate because they are flexible. Therefore, they do not restrain growth. Okay, so then what is the important feature of cholenchyma which involves in providing such a support to leaves and stem? It is, can you remember we said it earlier, cholenchyma has unevenly thickening of cell walls. Cholenchyma has uneven thickening of cell walls due to extracellulose deposition at the corners of the cell. Due to that extracellulose deposition, extra strength, extra support can be given. So remember it as an adaptation or structural modification or structural importance to provide support. That is presence of extra thickening of cell wall at the corners of the cell due to extracellulose deposition. Now about sclerenchyma cells. Here it says secondary cell walls are produced after cell elongation is ceased. That means, in other words, we can describe it like this. Previously, we said that cells added by initials are elongated, then differentiate. During this differentiation process, secondary cell walls are deposited in sclerenchyma cells. And also, later, during this differentiation, the secondary cell walls are lignified. That means lignin is gradually deposited in the secondary cell wall. Here, it is stated in the second statement. They have secondary cell walls thickened by large amount of lignin. That means they have lignified thick secondary cell wall. Then go to the third one. It says they are dead cells at maturity and has a cavity inside without a cytoplasm. Why they are dead cells at maturity? Maturity means during maturation, lignified secondary cell wall is deposited. Since it is lignified, substances can't move through the cell wall after deposition of lignin. Then after maturity, the cell will die. So then it's a dead cell at maturity. So then these dead cells do not possess cytoplasm. Therefore, they have a reduced cavity inside. Okay, then go to the fourth feature. These are tightly packed without intercellular spaces. It is common to collenchyma as well. We said it earlier. Then it says mature sclerenchyma cells cannot elongate. Why? Suggest a reason. Why they can't elongate? Because they have lignified secondary cell wall. We said collenchyma can elongate because they have flexible cell wall. It's a primary cell wall. But here mature sclerenchyma cells have lignified secondary cell wall. You know it's a tough layer. Therefore, they can't elongate after maturation. Therefore, they locate in regions of plant that have stopped growing in length, because with sclerenchyma, plant can't grow in those regions. Okay, there are two types of sclerenchyma cells. Those are sclerates and fibers. Remember here, the features that we mentioned above are common to both sclerates and fibers. Here, there are light micrographs of sclerates and fibers. Actually, these are transverse sections. At the left-hand side, you can observe there are sclerates. At the right-hand side, it has fibers. Those reddish regions in fibers are actually lignified secondary cell walls. Inner, you can observe there are cavities. In sclerates also, small cavities, reduced cavities are found inside and has a thick secondary cell wall. Now we can separately discuss about fibers and sclerates. There are differences as well. Here, when we are discussing the features, focus on these diagrams. Here first we will move to fibers. It says fibers are usually grouped in strands. They are long, slender and tapered. That's the shape. You can easily observe that shape in this LS. That means longitudinal section of a fiber. You can observe it's a long cell, slender with tapering ends. And note there, they have polygonal shaped transverse sections. Clear, fibers have polygonal shaped transverse sections. Okay. Then also the common features as we mentioned earlier can be observed. Here you can observe outer it has secondary cell wall, inner it has a cavity, no cytoplasm. And in the secondary cell wall, it has pits. Okay, these fibers are used commercially to obtain fibers. Example, coconut husk fiber, hemp fiber. Okay, then if you consider sclerates, now you can observe the shape of the cell is different. Here it is said sclerates are shorter and wider than fibers and irregular in shape. Not long, irregular in shape. And also these do not possess polygonal shaped transverse sections. They have very thick lignified secondary cell wall. Therefore, you can observe the cavity is comparatively reduced. Very thick secondary cell wall is present. In the secondary cell wall, you can observe pits. Here, sometimes these pits may be branched as well. You can observe in this diagram. Okay. Then they are found in places where growth has stopped. And here, remember, an additional feature, these sclerates may be found as clusters or as strands. Clusters of sclerates can be found in some locations. Here, examples, it says nutshells, seed coats. In those, in addition to that, flesh of pear fruit. In flesh of pear fruit, sclerates are arranged as clusters. Okay. In addition to that, where we can find the sclerates or fibers in the plant. Simply, these fibers or sclerenchyma fibers can be found in xylem and phloem and also in different other locations in the plant. When we are discussing a plant growth, we can mention those locations. Until then, here just remember they are found in xylem as well as in phloem. Okay. Finally, we will move to the function of sclerenchyma. Here it commonly says sclerites and fibers are specialized to provide support and strength. That's the function. Now we are moving to vascular tissues. You know there are two types of vascular tissues as xylem tissue and phloem tissue. First we will move to xylem tissue. Here you know the cell types found in xylem tissue of angiosperms and some of the gymnosperms. Those are vessel elements, tracheids, that means xylem vessel elements, tracheids, xylem fibers and xylem parenchyma cells. So what is the phylum of gymnosperm that possess these cells? That is Gnetophyta. I think you can remember this. Okay. And also we said when we are discussing diversity, other than angiosperms and Gnetophyta, lower vascular plants do not possess vessel elements. They have only tracheids, xylem fibers and xylem parenchyma. Okay, then general functions of each of these cell types are mentioned here. Look at this. Vessel elements and tracheids conduct water and minerals. Simply upward movement of water and mineral ions inside xylem through these vessel elements and tracheids can be termed as ascent of xylem sap. Okay, it is done by vessel elements and tracheids. But remember, among these two cell types, vessel elements are mainly adapted for the ascent of xylem sap or for conduction of water and mineral ions. In addition to conducting water, these vessel elements and tracheids involve in providing support and strength to the plant because they have dignified thick secondary cell wall. It's another function separately mentioned in your note. They provide strength and support in addition to conducting of water and minerals. Okay, and it says these are dead cells at functional maturity. Vessel elements and tracheids are dead cells. Only xylem parenchyma is a living cell type in the xylem. You know fibers are also dead cells. So what's the function of fibers? It says fibers give mechanical strength. That's a common fiber. These are the general or common sclerenchyma fibers that we mentioned earlier. Okay. Then xylem parenchyma functions in storage. It stores water and also some other substances. Here you can observe xylem parenchyma in the diagram given here. The only living cell is xylem parenchyma. It can be easily noted here because the only cell with cytoplasm and nucleus is xylem parenchyma. All the other cells are dead and they have cavities inside. But remember another thing here, fibers do not involve in conducting water. It only provides mechanical strength. Okay, finally, in addition to storage, parenchyma involves in radial transportation. What is this radial transport? And you know, if you consider stem or root, xylem is found in vascular body. It is mainly found in the middle of the plant. But when water and minerals that transport inside xylem is transported towards the peripheral parts of the plant stem or root, then they should be transported across parenchyma. Did you get that? Again, that means when water and mineral ions transport from xylem, which is found in the middle of the stem and root, to the peripheral parts of the plant, that water and mineral ions are transported through this xylem parenchyma. It's a radial transport. That means simply parenchyma involved in transporting water and mineral ions from vessel elements and tracheids along radia. That's the idea. Now we are going to discuss each of the cell types of xylem tissue separately. First we will move to vessel elements or xylem vessel elements. Here it says found in all angiosperms and some gymnosperms. Gymnosperms means Gnetophyta. We will move to structural features. First it says they are cylindrical and long. Look at the diagram given here. At your right hand side, you can observe vessel element. As you observe there, they are long and cylindrical cells. They are dead cells and have inner lumen. It also clearly observed in the diagram because these have thick lignified secondary cell walls, therefore they are dead cells. Then they have inner lumen. And there's a comparison here with tracheids. Look at that. They are wider, shorter, and have thinner walls than tracheids. So at your left hand side in these diagrams, it has a tracheid. You can observe it. It is comparatively thinner than the vessel element and also longer than the vessel element. And also remember here, tracheids have comparatively thicker secondary cell walls than vessel elements. Okay, those are differences. Next, secondary walls are thickened by lignin, we mentioned it, which provides support to prevent collapse under tension of water transport. That means here water and mineral ions are transported upwards through the lumen or through the inner lumen of vessel elements. When a column of water transports upwards, a comparatively high pressure is exerted on the wall or comparatively high tension is exerted on the wall. Having a thick lignified secondary cell wall is important to bear that tension during conduction of water. Okay, then next, vessel elements show different patterns of lignin deposition. As names, those are annular deposition. These are different patterns actually. Annular, that means in circles. Spiral, that means in spiral nature. Reticulate, as a network. Scalariform, that means as a staircase or in stepwise manner. And also in pitted. It's not needed to know the diagrams here, but remember the name simply. The patterns of deposition of lignin simply. That is enough. Okay. Here it says perforation plates are present at end walls of vessel elements. End walls means you can observe, if you consider single vessel element, the walls found at the top and the bottom are the end walls. These end walls are broken down with the maturation of the vessel element. With the differentiation, these end walls are broken down and form a plate with pore. That plate is known as perforation plate. Here in this diagram it is mentioned. Sometimes entire end wall can be broken down and form a single large pore. Sometimes, as in this diagram, slit-like openings are formed due to the breaking down of end walls. Then either way, pores are formed in the end wall. Then it is known as perforation plate. Okay. The other walls, that means lateral walls, are interrupted by pits. Those are known as lateral pits. They are also labeled in the diagram. The lateral wall, it has pits. These lateral pits are important for transportation of or conducting of water laterally. That means from xylem vessel elements to the periphery of the plant or to peripheral cells. Through these pits, water and mineral ions can be transported. Here, several vessel elements align end to end with perforation plates, which are continuous narrow tubes. Here, in other words, we can say, you can observe in the diagram. Actually, the diagram represents a xylem vessel, which xylem vessel means then single cell is a vessel element. The large number of these vessel elements align perfectly end to end and form a single narrow tube. That narrow tube is known as xylem vessel. It is stated here. Within this xylem vessel, water flows freely through perforation plates. That means, in other words, we can say through perforation plates, adjacent vessel elements are connected. Through those perforation plates, continuous movement of water or continuous conduction of water can happen upwards. Now we are discussing about tracheids. You know that tracheids are found in all vascular plants. In lower vascular plants, you know, vessel elements are not found. In those plants, water conduction happens through tracheids. Here previously we mentioned some differences between vessel elements and tracheids. You can observe those features here again. It says tracheids are long, thin cells, that means comparatively narrow cells than vessel elements, with tapering ends and polygonal shaped cross sections or transverse sections. Secondary walls are thickened with lignin and often interrupted by pits. Here you can observe in the diagram, lateral wall contain pits. Same patterns of lignin depositions are found as in vessel elements. We mentioned those patterns previously. Look at those again. Here, this is a dead cell within a lumen. It is a similarity to vessel element, but wider than sclerenchyma fibers. Here, if you consider fiber also, just recall, shape of the fiber is also like this. But you can easily distinguish fiber from a trachea. How? Fibers are comparatively narrow. That means, in other words, tracheids are comparatively wider. And also, tracheids have comparatively thicker secondary cell wall than a fiber. Those features can be used to distinguish a tracheid from fiber. Remember those. And put a note there in your note. Okay. Here it says water moves from end to end through pits. Here these tracheids do not possess perforation plates as in vessel elements. Here from one tracheid, you can observe in the diagram. Go to the diagram. Here you can observe tracheids are arranged as strands that are connected end to end. Then within these tracheids, water transported through pits found in the common cell wall. That means, in other words, from one tracheid to the next tracheid, water is transported through the pits found in the common wall. Here you can observe in the diagram there is an arrow. You can observe that those arrows represent movement of water through pits from one tracheid to the next tracheid. Okay. Thickening by lignin provides support to prevent collapse underwater transport. We mentioned it earlier as well. It's an adaptation even found in tracheids for conducting of water. Okay. Then simply about fibers and parenchyma. Finally, it says xylem fibers are typical sclerenchyma fibers. As we mentioned earlier, same features can be found as well. Xylem parenchyma also have typical features but comparatively elongated. If you go to the diagram of the xylem tissue given in the previous slide, you can observe this xylem parenchyma somewhat elongated than normal parenchyma. These diagrams represent vessel elements and tracheids. At your left hand side, it has vessel elements. At your right hand side, it has tracheids. You look at this. You can use this diagram to recall the differences, and also you can identify adaptations for efficient conducting of water found in vessel elements as well as in tracheids. As we mentioned earlier, you can observe in this diagram clearly, vessel elements are comparatively wider but shorter and have thinner cell walls than tracheids. Tracheids are longer, narrow with thicker secondary cell walls. And here you can observe there's another difference. These vessel elements have perforation plates. That means end walls are broken down and form perforation plate. As we mentioned earlier, it may be a single large pore as found in the left hand side vessel element, and also there may be slit like openings as in the right hand side vessel element. But tracheids do not possess perforation plates. We said in vessel elements, water conduct through these perforation plates from one vessel element to the next vessel element. But you can observe again, water transportation is indicated using an arrow. You can observe here what is conducted from one tracheid to the next tracheid through that pit found in the common cell wall. Okay, both have lateral pits. And also here you can observe vessel elements are somewhat cylindrical shape, long cylindrical shape, but tracheids, they are not cylindrical, they have polygonal shaped transverse sections. Okay, then we said vessel elements arrange end to end or align end to end and form a continuous narrow tube. That's a xylem vessel. Here at the bottom to the vessel elements, a part of that xylem vessel is mentioned, is indicated. You can observe the adjacent vessel elements are connected through perforation plates. Actually, it's a longitudinal section of xylem vessel. Okay, among these vessel elements and tracheids, we said earlier, vessel element is the most adapted cell type for efficient conduction of water and mineral ions. So what are the adaptations of vessel elements for efficient conduction of water? If you go to the slide that we mentioned previously, those adaptations are mentioned or indicated in red color. So here we will mention those. What are those adaptations for efficient conducting of water in vessel elements? First one, they are dead cells and have an inner lumen. So think in opposite. If there's a cytoplasm, can water conduct? Can't. Therefore, having a lumen is important for upward movement of water as a column. And also in second adaptation, end walls are broken down and form perforation plates, which is important for continuous upward movement of water column. Third one, we said they have thick lignified secondary cell walls. It is important to bear the tension during conduction of water. That's a third adaptation. Fourth adaptation of vessel element is large number of vessel elements align perfectly end to end and form a single continuous narrow tube. It is known as xylem vessel. That's the fourth adaptation. Okay, remember those carefully. Tracheids are also adapted. Tracheids also dead cells with inner lumen. It is an adaptation. They also have secondary cell wall. Then they have pits in the common cell wall. Those are adaptations of tracheids for efficient transportation of water. Finally, we are moving to phloem tissue. So what are the cell types found in phloem tissue? In angiosperms, phloem tissue consists of sieve tube elements. So remember here, sieve tube element is a single cell. Then second one, companion cells. Third, parenchyma cells. And fibers. These are sclerenchyma fibers. Except fibers, other phloem cells are living cells. It's a known fact. Okay, you know this second stuff. Look at that. In seedless vascular plants and gymnosperms, sieve tube elements and companion cells are absent. Instead of sieve tube elements, long narrow cells called sieve cells are present in these plants. Okay, here in angiosperms, phloem translocation, that means movement of food within the phloem, happens through the sieve tube element. Remember, among all these cell types, sieve tube element is the most adapted cell type for efficient phloem translocation. But sieve tube elements and companion cells are not found in lower vascular plants. Therefore, phloem translocation in them happens through sieve cells, but it is less adapted compared to sieve tube elements. Here we are discussing the types of cells of phloem tissue of angiosperms. First, we will move to sieve tube elements. Look at the diagrams. Here, sieve tube elements are long living cells. They have only thin primary cell wall. Therefore, they are living cells even at maturity. These sieve tube elements lack nucleus, ribosomes, and a distinct vacuole and cytoskeletal elements. But it has cytoplasm. But remember here, it says cytoplasm reduced into a thin peripheral layer and has a middle lumen. Look at the diagram. You can observe thin cytoplasm at the periphery of the cell is labeled there. It is important to form a middle lumen. This cytoplasm is very thin and it doesn't possess large organelles like nucleus, vacuole, and cytoskeletal elements, and also lack ribosomes. Absence of it says here, look at this, absence of above organelles and thin peripheral cytoplasm allows passing of nutrients more freely. Okay. Then it says chains of sieve tube elements. Chains of sieve tube elements are aligned to form sieve tube. What's the meaning of that? And here, sieve tube elements align end to end and form a continuous tube. The tube is known as sieve tube. Then it says the end walls between sieve tube elements contain porous plate called sieve plate. Here in vessel elements we said, in xylem vessel elements we said end walls are broken down and form perforation plates. But here these are not perforation plates. End walls here become porous. Those pores found in the end wall are known as sieve pores. The sieve pores containing plate or the end wall is known as sieve plate. In other words, I can say adjoining sieve tube elements are connected to these sieve plates. Then you can observe easily within the sieve tube, lumens of each sieve tube element are interconnected through this sieve plate, through those sieve pores. Therefore, it says here, sieve plate allows movement of fluid from one sieve tube element to the next. Okay, then lateral walls have numerous plasmodesmata. You can observe in this diagram here, through those plasmodesmata. The plasmodesmata are mentioned. You can label those. Through those plasmodesmata, sieve tube element is connected to the companion cell. And also another thing should be memorized here. Every sieve tube element has a partner companion cell. It is indicated in this diagram. Okay. We mentioned earlier, among sieve tube elements and sieve cells found in lower vascular plants, sieve tube element is the most adapted cell type for efficient phloem translocation. So what are the adaptations found in sieve tube element for this? Here those adaptations are given in red color here. Mark those in your note and memorize those carefully. Here first one is sieve tube elements like nucleus, ribosomes, a distinct vacuole and cytoskeletal elements. The absence of these organelles is important to provide more space to the lumen. Then second adaptation, cytoplasm is reduced into a thin peripheral layer and has a middle lumen. Think in an opposite way. If completely cytoplasm is filled inside the cell, food movement or phloem translocation can't happen. Therefore, having a lumen is important. To maintain a lumen, to form a lumen, cytoplasm becomes thin and confined to the periphery of the cell. The second adaptation. Third one, it says chains of sieve tube elements are aligned to form sieve tubes. It is important for continuous movement of food or phloem sap inside the sieve tube element. Then it says the end walls between sieve tube elements contain porous plate or sieve plate. That's the fourth adaptation. So remember this very carefully. Now we are moving to companion cells. We mentioned earlier, companion cell is found as a partner of sieve tube element. Here you can observe this diagram. At the side of the sieve tube element, you can find a companion cell. Okay. Then look at this. It says they are non-conducting cells. That means they do not involve in transporting of phloem sap. Here it says companion cells are found alongside in each sieve tube element and connects with sieve tube element by numerous plasmodesmata. We mentioned it earlier as well. You can observe it in this diagram too. Here you can observe there are numerous plasmodesmata in the common wall between sieve tube element and the companion cell. Okay, then the companion cell has a large nucleus and ribosomes. These also control the cellular activities of adjacent sieve tube element. Why? Because we said earlier, even though sieve tube element is living, it doesn't possess a nucleus. Therefore, cellular activities of sieve tube element are also controlled by the nucleus of companion cell. For that, it has more genetic material. It is comparatively large. Also, companion cell has a dense cytoplasm without large central vacuole. Remember, without large central vacuole. If you consider phloem parenchyma, it has a large vacuole. Therefore, absence of a large vacuole can be easily used to distinguish a companion cell from phloem parenchyma in the tissue diagram. So remember that and note that. Okay. Then cytoplasm has numerous mitochondria which provide energy required for phloem loading. So what is this loading? Actually, phloem loading is the main function of companion cell. You know that by photosynthesis, sugars are produced in photosynthetic tissues like leaves. They may be temporarily stored as starch within the leaf. When they are transported, that starch is converted to sucrose. That sucrose is transported inside the phloem sap. The sucrose and other components of phloem sap like amino acids, plant growth substances, and also some mineral ions. These are the components of phloem sap. they should be transported from other cells, or for an example from leaf mesophyll cells to sieve tube element for transportation. First, from those leaf mesophyll cells, those components of phloem sap are added or transported into the companion cell. Then from the companion cell, those components of phloem sap, including sucrose, are secreted into the lumen of the sieve tube element. This process is known as phloem loading. In other words, simply we can say phloem loading means secretion of sucrose and other components of phloem sap from companion cell into the sieve tube element. Normally this happens against the concentration gradient. Therefore, it is an active process or it consumes energy. So combinedly, we can say phloem loading means secretion of sucrose and other components of phloem sap into sieve tube element from companion cell against the concentration gradient using ATP. That's phloem loading. So note that in your notebook. This phloem loading is an active process, therefore it needs energy. Therefore, cytoplasm of companion cell has numerous mitochondria to produce that required energy. Okay, then it says sieve tube element and companion cell have a common origin. Then some companion cells in leaves help in phloem loading, as we mentioned, and in other organs unloading. So unloading is the opposite of loading. During unloading, the components of sieve tube elements are secreted into the adjacent companion cell. So when loading happens in a leaf, unloading can happen in a growth point or in a storage site of the plant. Finally, we can discuss about phloem fibers and phloem parenchyma. Here it says phloem fibers are typical sclerenchyma fibers which provide mechanical support. That's a function. So underline it. Phloem parenchyma also has typical characters of parenchyma but elongated in shape. Parenchyma involves in storage of food. That's its function. So in the previous slide, the adaptations of companion cells for efficient loading are mentioned in red color. So in your note, mark them as adaptations of companion cells for its efficient activities. Now we are coming to the end of this lesson. So hope you have studied it well, and when there are special notes, put them onto your notebook, draw the diagrams. So it's not needed to draw the complex diagrams as downloaded from the internet. Here you can draw the tissue diagrams and memorize those. Remember also there is a practical lesson. Okay, if you have any questions, you can ask me. Hope to meet you again in the next lesson, that is plant growth.